Namaste everyone. I am Kaushal Balaji, working at the Foundation for Democratic Reforms. Today we have Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan with us, and we will be discussing some aspects of the recently concluded parliamentary elections. Sir, Namaste, sir.
Hello, Kaushal.
For my first question, I have a two-part question. The first part regarding Uttar Pradesh, and the second part regarding Odisha. In the recently concluded parliamentary elections of 2024, the BJP has lost almost half of its seat share in Uttar Pradesh in comparison to 2019. So, despite visible infrastructure development, revenue surplus, and improvement in safety standards, the party has not performed well as per everyone's expectations. So, what do you think might have impacted the BJP's campaign negatively in the state? And what are the visible trends moving forward in the state? When it comes to Odisha, we have also seen a similar trend in Odisha. And has the agenda for economic growth failed Naveen Patnaik as well?
Kaushal, there are no simple answers to how people respond in elections in a vast and diverse country like India. Because first of all, we must understand, as far as the people are concerned, for most people, elections are state-specific. The unit of politics in India is typically an assembly constituency. Therefore, the verdict generally is for or against the government in the state, irrespective of the Lok Sabha election, assembly, or local government. Though of late, whenever there is a strong personality at the national level, there is a certain increase in the proportion of people who are voting entirely on national issues. But still, the vast majority vote on the basis of the state. That's why you see a lot of difference from state to state. Under similar circumstances, Bihar is responding one way, UP is another way, and Karnataka another way, because 25 years of in my judgment, very creditable rule or governance of Naveen Patnaik. But after 25 years, anywhere in the world in democracies, people will want an alternative. So there's no overarching answer. But such as it is, we can glean two broad lessons from this election. The first is people are impatient. People want quick change. And people want growth that actually impacts their lives personally, not Bharat Mata. Take Uttar Pradesh. Unquestionably, even if it's by some rough and ready methods, there is a general perception that public order at least was enforced. Gundas were kept under check. People applauded that. Undoubtedly, infrastructure was given an enormous boost in Uttar Pradesh. And the chief minister is personally believed widely to be utterly honest. And a lot of investment started flowing into a relatively poor state like UP. And UP, remember, if it were a separate country, it would be the fourth or fifth largest country in the world. We're not talking of a small entity. And certainly, Bharatiya Janata Party derived dividends. They got re-elected for the second time in the assembly. They got the reward in 2019 Lok Sabha election. But while it's necessary, people welcome it, it's not sufficient. That's the first thing we must get. People are impatient, the poor in particular, because while growth is real in the country, and growth touches everybody, a high tide lifts all boats. But unfortunately, in modern economy, growth especially benefits those with skills, those with capital, those with access to an urban area, which is an engine of growth. Rural people, people with very poor quality of education and skills, people without much capital, they don't feel the impact of growth as much as the rest of the people. And the vast majority in India are the poor, low skilled, largely rural people. Remember that. There is no natural majority for growth in India yet. It will take another 10-15 years. So basically, what are the people saying? We want growth, but where is growth for my family? I'm impatient. It's not enough that you have done wonderful things in terms of infrastructure, but my life is not yet personally impacted. So inclusive growth, I think, is the most important message you must derive, whichever way the party. Inclusive growth. So they voted for growth because they did not vote out the party in power, but they also showed their dissatisfaction and impatience by also rewarding the opposition. This is the first and most important thing, in my judgment, if there is one lesson across the country. The second thing that I think we should learn from this electoral verdict is, we are a very fractious, divided, diverse society. If not divided, a very diverse society. Perhaps the world's most diverse society. If you take caste, region, religion, language, and with very tortuous history. And people have their own bigotry. People have their own small prejudices. For instance, this language thinks other language is inadequate, they make fun of it. This region thinks other region is less culturally evolved, they make fun of it. This religion thinks a little less of the other religion and vice versa. All these are common, but, and this is very important, there is an invisible boundary that our society does not cross. Even if we have some bigotry in our hearts, caste, region, religion, language, all these things, even if sometimes we act a little irrationally, there is a boundary which we are not supposed to cross. Because centuries of coexistence made us very pragmatic. We realized that even if we have differences, even if sometimes we don't always accept the other fully, if we don't live and let live, if we don't respect each other, then there will be chaos, there will be violence. It's something that we intuitively understood. The ordinary people understood. Now the rhetoric of the governing party, in order to probably garner a majority when there is a caste division, the BJP's DNA seems to be to unite all Hindus. And in order to unite all Hindus, apart from economic growth and aspiration, the more easy path of unity is somehow creating an emotional outburst. The other day, Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, said, emotion is more powerful than rationality in politics. And in emotion, the positive emotion, like prejudice, hatred, envy, anger, is more powerful than, the negative emotion, prejudice, hatred, anger, and envy, is more powerful than positive emotion like aspiration and hope. So parties all over the world, in some respect or other, they try and practice negative emotion. And I think BJP also practiced that by trying to polarize society by having an anti-Muslim diatribe. I think people are also sending a signal, this far and no further. Otherwise, in Faizabad, Ayodhya, Sitapur, Barabanki, many other places, BJP would not have lost. I think these are the two most important lessons: inclusive growth and impatience of the people. They want visible results affecting their families and themselves, in addition to infrastructure and growth in general. And put a stop to divisive politics beyond a point we don't like it. I think it will be helpful if parties get that message beyond all this noise and intense competition, which is okay in democracies, but it's above parties. There's a bigger lesson to be learned.
So when it comes to a huge vote share is obviously aspires for inclusive growth, right? But despite the dangers of a welfare-centric economic policy advocated by some opposition parties like the Congress, the BJP has consistently received a significant seat share in the Lok Sabha post 2014. In fact, its tally of 240 in the recent elections beats the performance by every other party since 1989. Does this mean that the BJP's pro-market policies and fiscal conservatism still attract some value from the voters?
No, I think across the board, obviously the people who are benefiting from economic growth because of their skills and education and capital and urbanization, they are much more receptive, almost universally. And the people who are not benefiting that much but can see the advantages of growth, they are supportive, but with a caveat. So there is a broad-based support in the country. But from the poor and the rural population with low skills, that support is not strong enough, it's not permanent. So that's why the vote is for growth. Don't mistake that. But it's also for inclusion. They're saying now add inclusion. But it is for growth. And among the available options, I think it's clear to most people that BJP has a more credible roadmap for economic growth. But people are saying it's necessary, we welcome it, not sufficient, therefore we urge some reconsideration, reset. That's what it means. Otherwise, the kind of short-term welfareism offered by Congress party, primarily Congress party, which is leading the opposition coalition or alliance, is extraordinary. Extraordinary. 1 lakh rupees per woman among all the poor families, without defining how many poor, because it depends on you. You can say 80%, you can say 50%, 20%, 10%, I don't know. Then a more sensible program, we could probably redesign it. 1 lakh rupees for apprenticeship for unemployed youth. I think it's good, but we have to see the viability, etc. But it's a good idea. But a much more dangerous idea is loan waiver, and loan waiver in perpetuity, a commission for loan waivers, destroying the credit system and fiscal discipline in the country forever. It's an outrageous promise. I don't think any country in the world made that promise. Then 30 lakh government jobs in union government. The total number of employees directly in union government departments is 15 lakhs. If you include the armed forces, another 15 lakhs. If you include the railways, another 15 lakhs. Railways actually are a commercial undertaking, but are regarded as the Department of Government. 45 lakhs. 10 lakh jobs are filled in the last 1 or 2 years in union government. 30 lakh jobs are not there. It's an absolute untruth. And it's not the way to create jobs. It's not the way to solve unemployment or underemployment problem. And even if, for argument's sake, you fill 30 lakh jobs, all right, this year you fill. Every year 1 crore 30 lakh people are joining the job market. Next year also you want to fill 30 lakh jobs? Where? For what purpose? Is the government's job to simply recruit some people and take all the tax money without providing services and creating growth and building infrastructure and common amenities? You simply fund the government employees and say we have done it? What kind of utterly dangerous approach this is? Or take some other areas of extreme promises. For instance, Agniveer should be repealed. The reason for Agniveer is the pension system, the old unfunded, ever-growing pension system, wage index linked and price index linked. Therefore, the money is simply going down the drain. Therefore, Vajpayee government started the contributory pension scheme. The Congress government and Manmohan Singh continued that and expanded it in the whole country. Now you're breaking the consensus, and because armed forces are exempt, wrongly in my opinion, from the contributory pension system, there is no other choice but to create a force without the pensionability. Now, without going into that insincerely, we are going into all kinds of TC. So, this is a very dangerous path. That's why while people showed their impatience, their desire for inclusive growth, they have not really embraced this kind of extreme short-term individual welfareism at the cost of the long-term good. So it's a very refined verdict collectively, and we must read it that way.
So my next question is regarding the coalition government. So the Modi government received single majorities in both 2014 and 2019. However, it is forming a government this time with the assistance of coalition partners. How do you think the Prime Minister's governance style might change if it changes? And what are the merits and demerits of a coalition government with respect to today's challenges?
Kaushal, remember, before you were born, since 1989, that is now 35 years, every government except the last two governments under Mr. Narendra Modi were coalition governments. So, post 1984 or post 1989, coalition is the norm in India. A single party majority is an exception. So, we have gotten used to it. The economic reform package in 1991 came in a coalition government. A government which only had, I think, about at the time 206 or so seats, and that too, if Mr. Rajiv Gandhi, the former Prime Minister, was not assassinated in between two phases of election, probably the Congress strength would have been limited to 150 or 160. That assassination made people very angry and emotional, and they rewarded Congress. Whether the National Front government or Vajpayee government or later Manmohan Singh government, none of them had a single party majority. So there is no, it's nothing novel or unusual. In a very large, federal, diverse country, multilingual, you have to deal with other parties, other ideas, and therefore we have to deal with all parties. And in a way, if the governing coalition and the opposition both handle it with maturity and with the national interest in the heart, it's an opportunity. Opportunity to forge a consensus on the key issues. Between 1991 and about 2010-11, for about 20 years, there was an impressive consensus in the country on economic growth and fiscal discipline. When the parties varied in their philosophies and agenda, broadly that there should be fiscal discipline and there should be economic growth. These 2 points were accepted because of the 1991 memories of the economic crisis, etc. Even the communists who were a part of the National Front coalition under Mr. Devagowda as Prime Minister and then Mr. I.K. Gujral as Prime Minister and Mr. Indrajit Gupta and others were in the cabinet. Even they generally did not deviate from the growth path and fiscal rectitude path. But in the last 10-15 years, that consensus has broken down. Congress, the architect of reforms, suddenly has given up fiscal discipline. Now is an opportunity to forge a consensus again. We may differ on some issues and policies, but on fundamentals, foreign policy, obvious, and by and large, there's no difference except they attack each other. National security, by and large, not much of a difference. But in economic management of the country also, long-term trajectory, now a consensus has to be forged. It's an opportunity. And if that happens, it's actually more enduring because if decisions are made by consensus, then they will last. There will not be any volatility. There will not be a fear that there will be a rollback of the decisions. Like the farm laws were extremely sound laws. The 3 farm laws enacted were very sound laws. What are they? One of them gave freedom to the farmers. Earlier, under the Essential Commodities Act, the producer was always at a disadvantage. Whenever the prices were shooting up a little more than what the government wanted and the consumer felt comfortable, government swooped in, raided, seized, harassed, detained, did whatever it took to simply make the prices crash at the cost of the producer, the farmer. Time and again. I enforced it as a district magistrate and in other capacities. It's a terrible law from the farmer's point. Everybody talked about farm sector liberalization. Congress party was committed. And yet, it was opposed as if it's a totally anti-farmer black law because the consensus was not forged. The second element of the farm laws is removing the monopoly of the market yards. The laws generally said until that time, you can only sell in the market yard. So you only have to sell at one place. And wherever you sold, even if you sell other places, you have to pay a market cess. What did this law say? You can sell anywhere you like. And only if you sell in the market yard will you have to pay market cess. How is it wrong? How is it bad for the farmers? And yet, it was painted as a black law for the farmers. Even now they're agitating. The third law is that there's a lot of price volatility in India. Today price will go up to 100 rupees, tomorrow it will become 5 rupees. Tomato goes to 60 rupees, tomato goes to half a rupee. It's bad for the producer and the consumer both. Supposing somebody assures you a guaranteed price, let's say 15 rupees a kg of tomato or potato or cotton, even non-perishable commodities like cotton, so that the farmer does not have to indulge in distress sale. Then only if you're comfortable with the price will you agree, will you enter into a contract and will you raise the crop. If you don't want that contract, you sell anywhere you like. Nobody is stopping you. But this is an option available. Why is it bad for the farmers? These were the 3 laws. Truth and common sense and the global practices tell us these were very sound laws. They are necessary. They are not sufficient, but they are necessary. But see the kind of problem created in the country, it continues to be created. Nobody discussed the merits of the law. It's all about tug of war, fighting each other. But if a coalition is there, if a consensus is forged, if there is a wider public debate, like the way we are discussing, they are discussed honestly, there's a greater chance of the reforms actually taking roots. So as long as fiscal discipline is there, some boundaries are accepted, and economic growth we're all committed to, I think a coalition government need not mean a decline in economic growth.
So I just had one final follow-up question with respect to consensus building. So you said that it is important to have consensus when pushing through major reform. I would like to ask you a question regarding Agniveer. There might be some pushback from the BJP's coalition partners from Bihar. So how do you think the present government can navigate through some of those issues and reach an agreeable conclusion with respect to the law?
You're talking about short-term welfare measures?
With respect to Agniveer, sir.
Agniveer.
Yeah.
You see, if you blindly go back to the old practice, 15 years service typically, and then a pension for the next 30, 40 years, because remember, the average lifespan is increasing in the country. If at 17 or 18 a youngster joins the armed forces, by 32, 34 is retiring. We expect them to live until 80, 85 because the average lifespan is increasing. For the next 45, 50 years, pension has to be paid and is unfunded. You did not put away the money in advance. And it's index linked. Therefore, not only is it price index linked, as prices go up, pension goes up, but it's also wage index linked. With every pay revision commission, pension goes up. So, if you retire, let's say, with a 50,000 rupee income, you may draw a pension of 3 lakhs or 4 lakhs later. From whom? The taxpayer. Which taxpayer? Future taxpayer. For what? For services rendered in the past. It's affecting intergenerational equity. That means we're destroying our children's future in a fit of self-serving decision today. Therefore, if it's necessary to go back, either you persuade with facts that national defense is compromised and the exchequer is depleted, or you do one of three things. One, armed forces can go back to the same way as the other government services in the country, both union and states. You can go back to contributory pension scheme so that there is a pension fund available. The future generations don't have to pay for ever increasing pensions. It's absolutely necessary. Two, you can increase the years of service subject to the feasibility, because the fitness and other things. Instead of 15 years, make it 25 or 30 years. They can go together actually, these 2 points. Three, whatever you do, you make sure that there is a fund available today, not 30 years later, but today, put it away as a pension fund, sufficient to meet the pension needs 25, 30, 40 years later. Go by discounted cash flow and decide what is the amount required in order to meet the pension obligation 30 years later, and put that money here. If we don't do that, you're guaranteeing destruction. You're guaranteeing destruction of the country. There is no future. Next generation is finished. There is no major country on earth. There is no major country on earth, and there is no democracy on earth where unfunded, index-linked pension in perpetuity is paid from the exchequer by the next generation from the tax money. It's just not feasible. India is going to be destroyed. So Agniveer must not be viewed in isolation. If indeed you want to go back to some kind of a status quo, then you change the status quo in other respects. A, contributory pension. B, increase the length of service simultaneously. And C, in any case, put the fund today. At least you know what is the money you're spending. Then, whether it is Mr. Nitish Kumar or some other party in the governing coalition or in opposition, or the economists and the society and the media, they understand exactly what is the obligation, what is the burden. Now, you cannot take decisions to affect the future without paying for it now, because you're postponing the liability. Nobody elected you to destroy the future 25 years later. They elected you to manage the country the next 5 years. So if you're going to make a decision affecting the future, make a provision today.
All right, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm sure you. Thank you for your wonderful insights into some of today's challenges. Yeah.
Thank you, Kaushal.